welcome back to another episode of Community Chats. I'm Gracie Davidson, and in the Spark studio with me is Reggie Alexander. Mr. Reggie works for NASA, and he talks about all the cool things he's got to work on and some of the future things and just the great collaboration community NASA has. He gives a little bit of career advice for engineers and people who are just starting to go into the workforce. You don't want to miss this episode, so let's get started. Hello, Mr. Reggie. How are you? Thank you for being in the studio.
Great. Yeah, I'm doing very well, and thank you for having me. Looking forward to it.
Awesome. So tell us a little bit about yourself and kind of what brought you to the Huntsville area.
Yeah, wow, that's a really good question. I've been in Huntsville now for about 32 years. Came here directly out of school and started working for NASA, so that's really why I'm here. Came here to work. Do some really cool stuff with NASA. Like I said, I've been here for 32 years, wife and kids, raised a family here, and looking to retire here most likely. It's a great place to live, as many of you know, and Huntsville's just a cool place.
Yeah, I just moved here probably about 6 months ago, and I don't think I'll ever go back to my small town. I love it here so much. So what led you to NASA?
Going to work for NASA was not immediately in my future, if you will, when I was in high school and in college. It wasn't even on my mind, to tell you the truth, because NASA was the place where smart people went. And I was just a guy trying to hang on and do some really cool stuff. But I had a friend who actually worked here. I had known nearly my whole life. And one day I was on college campus at Mississippi State, and he was there, and we were talking about my graduating, and he said, "Hey, how would you like to come work for NASA?" And I was like, yeah, right.
So this was your first job and only job?
This is my first and only job.
That's awesome. That's so impressive.
Yeah, well, if you don't count co-ops, I did a co-op. So you may be familiar with the Browns Ferry nuclear plant, which is just over near Athens.
Okay, yeah.
So I did that when I was at my junior year in college. So this is not my first time living in Huntsville. I lived here when I was a junior in college for about 4 or 5 months while I was a co-op over at Browns Ferry. But he asked, did I want to come work for NASA? So I said, sure. I filled out the paperwork and got an interview, came over in January and interviewed. Next thing you know, I'm here. Amazing. And so it's been great. You know, it wasn't simply that I didn't know or care about NASA. I knew about the space program as a kid. Grew up on Star Trek, pretended to be an astronaut quite a bit with my brother, but at some point, you know, you don't necessarily think that's your future.
Yeah.
Because it is NASA, and it's where all the smart people work, and it just worked out that I got a real good opportunity to come here.
Did you have a plan of because you said you didn't know you were going to be at NASA. Did you have a different plan?
So yeah, I mean, I did go to college, majored in mechanical engineering. So
Okay.
My objective obviously was to graduate, get an engineering job. I had a couple of interviews with some companies in the Southeast, but when the NASA interview came, I just ignored all those others and came over here. And like I said, fortunately, it worked out. So it never was my immediate objective to go work for NASA.
What was your starting position?
So I was a thermal analyst, so doing heat transfer fluid mechanics in a group called Program Development. And so it was an organization that did a lot of the preliminary planning for new NASA missions. And so that was one of the coolest opportunities, because the things that you see today were the things we were dreaming about those 30 years ago. And so I got a chance to do a lot of that early on in my career and help create the new things.
Wow. So what's your position now?
So amazingly, the position that I have now is somewhat of a follow-on to what I started out doing.
Okay.
I manage the partnerships and formulation office at Marshall. And so that office's objective is to create new work opportunities for Marshall and do that through partnerships. So we engage with some of the strategic planning and business development opportunities there at the center, and then use partnerships with commercial, with companies, with academia, and also other government agencies to help enable that. So we're always thinking about the newest, latest, greatest thing that NASA can be doing and trying to figure out how to make that happen.
Would you say their constant need for growth and exploration is your favorite part about being in NASA, or would it be something else?
No, absolutely. Of course, what I like a lot about working with NASA are the great people. But yes, that constant need of finding new things that the agency can go do, new things that we can do for the country to push space exploration, certainly beyond low Earth orbit. We're going to the moon, obviously, and then on
So
beyond
exciting.
there. Yeah, it's really exciting. And again, as I've said before, a lot of those things that we're doing today were things that we were envisioning 10, 15, 20 years ago. And so it's really cool to see that those things have become a reality.
I bet it makes going to work interesting every day because it's not the same thing. You're always looking for new opportunities.
Exactly. And it's not the same thing. I joke oftentimes as I'm a little bit ADD, and this probably contributes to that because you wake up every day and the first thing you think is, okay, what cool stuff are we going to do today? How are we going to help NASA do the great and wonderful things that it's set up to do? And usually it's not the same thing. It's not the same program, not the same project, not the same idea. And so how do we help turn those ideas into reality?
That's awesome. What do you think some of the most impactful projects you have worked on?
So another really, really good question. Again, started 30 years ago. And the first thing I was working on when we came in was going to the moon.
Yeah.
And to Mars. And so you can see that a lot of the fruits of what we were doing then are bearing out today. So I've been very fortunate to see many, many NASA programs. The one that I'm probably most excited about is the SLS. Obviously, we're going very, very soon. And so we did the conceptual design work. We worked with the group that did the conceptual design work. So 10, 15 years ago when we were figuring out what it could be. And so that's one thing that I really am proud of. And we're holding our breath, waiting for it to launch. We're looking very forward to that. But there's many others. I mean, we've been thinking about how do we put people on the surface of Mars, putting people back on the moon and then going on to Mars. And so all of those programs were started in the shop where I began my career and currently are working. We did space station redesign way back when, and also many science programs. So, but probably the biggest one and the one that I'm most eager to see is the SLS.
2 years ago, kind of COVID hit. So did that slow down y'all's creative growth and process?
You know, in terms of our day-to-day working, it really didn't slow things down.
Okay.
What it did slow down was our engagement with, the community and a lot of...
and that's a big part.
It's a big part. And so internally, my team continued to work. We were fortunate that we were able to work from home. Awesome. But, reaching out and engaging with the potential partners that are going to help us enable getting back into space and onto the moon and farther wasn't always easily accomplished because we couldn't physically be in the same place. So you had to learn how to work, virtually. And not everybody at the time when we got started under COVID was able to do that very well. So a lot of technology enabled that, but also just a lot of hard work and perseverance to enable to talk about and how do we engage with the community.
That's awesome. So I know going to the moon is a current project. What are some of the future projects you see for y'all's division?
Yeah, so again, obviously exploration is one of our big things, and we definitely are still talking about trying to go to Mars. And so that's one of our things. We're also looking at many science programs.
Awesome.
And a lot of the details are still being worked out, but NASA's always looking to further its objectives in space and exploration.
Awesome. What would you say is one of the more challenging parts of your job, but it still gives you, not challenging, but it still gives you growth and beneficial? It's a good type of challenge, is what I'm trying to say.
Right. So as an engineer, working with numbers and math models and things, but what I've mostly learned is you don't go to space necessarily with things. What you really are working to do is grow the people who help develop those things. And so that's probably one of the more rewarding aspects of my job now is trying to help people who then help turn those things into reality. So it's pretty exciting to see growth, professional and personal, of the folks that I work with on a daily basis. So that's where I get a lot of my enjoyment now, not just seeing the things go, but seeing the people who help make those things go.
Do you ever think you could see yourself in a different type of division in NASA, or do you think what you're at now is like meant for you?
Another great question. I think having done this now for about 30 years, more or less, I think this was the right spot for me. I've done a few other things, but working in a place where new ideas and new concepts are created, trying to figure out how to make them become real is very challenging, but it's a lot of fun. I don't think I would do well in a place where I could spend multiple years doing the same thing. So I think I landed in the exact right spot for my professional and personal growth.
What would you say to the people who are starting their careers, like you kind of didn't know you would land at NASA? What would you tell them?
Keep your options open. That's the first thing. Don't lock in on one given job or one given location. Keep your options open. But certainly, probably the biggest thing that I would say for a person looking to grow into a career and develop themselves is have discipline. Be disciplined in everything you do. Consistency and focus. Kind of set your attention on an objective. And because there's things happen that aren't always in your control, but there's no magic pill to make it happen.
Yeah.
Hard work, discipline, focus. That would be my biggest advice that I would give to someone.
You were talking about an objective, so like a goal in life. Do you think your goal in life kind of changed over as your career went on and you got more into it?
I think so, because I can remember coming out of college using the terms like I want to do this brilliant design and have patents and do all sorts of things that were more about myself. And as I got older and we started to see things become a reality, it really became more about the system and about the people who are helping create the system, and how do I help myself fit into that and enable that and grow a team and have a team that can accomplish that. So a lot of my personal growth became more about, how do I fit myself into this bigger picture? Yeah. And not just worrying about, the things that I really like to do for myself individually.
Okay, so you were given the ideas, you kind of weren't standing back, and you were giving your own voice to make sure you were noticed and to fit into that. Was that what you're saying?
Yeah.
Awesome.
Yeah. So there's each time you do something in an engineering design, you have to consider it from a total system perspective. A large part of that system is not just the thing, as I said before, it's about the people. And so I think where I've grown to is thinking more along those lines. How do you put it all together to make it happen?
So in NASA, I'm guessing it's not just one person has that specific niche, and you have to have multiple people doing everything, and that you put it all together. Right.
Well, and there's lots of people helping, as you said. And as I said before, I think one of the coolest things about working with NASA is some of the smartest people on the planet. Yeah. And they all have tremendous skill. And so a key capability is just being able to put all of those things together. All of those people weave those ideas together, pull out the best in all the individual pieces. And magic happens when you do that. It's amazing to see what a team of brilliant folks can do, and we see it every day. That's probably another really cool thing about working with NASA is there's wonderful stuff that happens every day, and so you get to look up and see it, and you have to take a step back. Oftentimes in our jobs, we do year-end reviews, and we look at what did we do from a particular time up to this current date, and what always amazes me is how much really, really awesome stuff we were able to do in a year's time. And so, but it's not just an individual; it's a team, and you have to know how to orchestrate that team, orchestrate all of those discipline elements. I grew up as a thermal analyst. That was what I knew the most coming out of college. But by the time I was 10 years into my career, I was trying to learn a lot more about all the other engineering disciplines.
That's
because
awesome.
Those are necessary to enable a big vehicle system, such as an SLS or a Mars lander or whatever else. Yeah.
Do you think being around different people helped your perspectives and your creativity kind of grow and change?
Oh, absolutely. If you're only focused on yourself, or if you're only focused on doing things the way you know how to do them, you won't be terribly successful. There's always someone with advice and counsel. There's always someone who knows a more interesting way, if not necessarily a better way, to do a thing. And so you want to learn as much as you can from everybody that you have engagement with. And in doing so, again, you develop a better product, a better vehicle, a better widget to enable that vehicle.
Did you have a mentor you looked up to, or is it kind of was just like everybody that you connected with that you kind of took something from them and went with it?
Well, I think over my career, I've had several mentors, and it depends on where I was in my career.
Okay.
When I joined initially, I was paired up with someone who was an engineer in the same discipline that I was in, and so I did everything I could to learn as much from her as I possibly could to grow myself into that discipline. And then as you grow, or as I grew into more of a manager, if you will, in my job, there were leaders that I wanted to emulate or learn as much as I could from them. So it wasn't 20 people, but it wasn't just one.
Yeah.
And I had 4 or 5 I would call mentors, very close friends, and not just professionally, but there were folks who were instrumental in my life's growth from a personal standpoint as well.
Awesome. So I know you started as an employee and then went up to a managerial position. What do you think some of the aspects and soft skills and hard skills kind of changed in those two positions?
Oh, absolutely. And that's one of the other things that I would offer as advice to someone who's looking to grow themselves in their career. Yeah. Coming out of college, thought I was pretty good at being a thermal analyst and engineering, but what I really learned is if you want to grow and go far, those soft skills are incredibly important. Some of the things that NASA has allowed me to do is to spend time mentoring and coaching young people in the school system. And after we tell them a lot, what we do from an engineering standpoint and a program development standpoint, I get asked, so what would you advise for students? And the thing that even though it's a technical talk, the thing that I advise is learn how to write.
Yes.
Learn how to write well, learn how to communicate well, because those are the things that actually carry you the farthest. Many people can do the math and do the science, but what I've learned over time, it's those people that can put the program together, communicate that vision, write it down. It doesn't do you any good to design the best widget if you can't tell somebody how to do it or how you did it or how they can use it. Once you get past there, those soft skills will carry you very far.
What do you think the top 3 soft skills are to have?
Well, listening is probably number 1.
Yes.
That took me a long time to learn, and many people probably say you still haven't gotten it.
I struggle with it.
Yeah, listening. Also, I think learning how to write.
Yes.
And putting those ideas on paper, but writing in a way that it's very clear, concise, and most anybody can understand what you're telling them. Many times I've written things that I hand to somebody else, and they look at it and they go, "What is this?" And so, learning how to write very clear and concise. You want the reader to not have to work. You do all the work. And also just being able to simplify, take the most complex thing that you're talking about, simplify it so that anybody can understand it. And once you do that and you're able to communicate clearly, those ideas go very far.
What do you think was the hardest soft skill for you to master?
I would say writing. It was a huge challenge to me. Learning not just subject verb agreement, but learning how to take the ideas and put them in a form that was very clear, easily understood by somebody who has not necessarily no connection to what I'm doing.
Do you think you just got better at it as long as you went through your career, or did you kind of have to step aside and say, okay, I need to work in this area, I need to focus on it?
No, I think it is. There's a time element to
Okay.
it. I mean, some people are very good at it. I wasn't. And that was one of the courses I had in college that I was just glad to get out of because I struggled the whole time. But over time, the more you practice, the better you get. But you also learn from your failures. And so over time, after many failures, you figure out how to get better at it.
So you see failure as growth opportunity and not as a negative, but you see it as a positive.
Right, absolutely, and that's one of the things that is even a part of the space program is you learn a lot from your failures. So even though some of our tests don't go well, in those tests, when something fails, you look at why it failed, and then you correct that and you grow from it. As similarly, just personally and professionally, you have failures. I've learned a lot from my failures, and so you correct those mistakes and try to move forward. Hopefully, you don't fail so badly that you can't recover.
Yeah. Do you think you learn more from failures or growth?
Truth be told, oftentimes if you don't fail, you don't know whether you were right or wrong. I mean, sometimes
I can agree with that.
things just go well. It just worked out, right? So why did it work out? You don't know. But if you fail, you know exactly what failed, why it failed, and then you correct that, and you know that problem is fixed, and then definitely you grow.
Did you always have that mindset as failure is a positive thing?
No. And sometimes I still struggle with that, right? Because we all want to be successful. We all want to do great things. And so one of my biggest fears is failure. And so I have to really fight to overcome that I don't want to let people around me down. I don't want to let myself down. So you got to overcome that fear to actually take a risk and know that there's a chance of failure. Fail, fix it, and get better.
Were you ever afraid you were going to fail, like at some point in your career, and you thought this was the end?
I don't know, not necessarily so in that, but it's always in the back of your mind that if you don't do your job well, something bad can happen.
Yeah.
So you just keep that in the back of your mind, and that puts a sharper point on your focus. So
Gives you some motivation.
Gives you some motivation. I think for me, given that we work for the American people, being a government employee, there's an extra motivation to be successful and to do really wonderful things for this nation, not just for me.
That's awesome. Yeah, I like that.
Just thinking about some of the other things that, as I was preparing to come here, if I were to ask myself again, how would I prepare myself for my career?
Yeah.
How would I do that different? I didn't know what an engineer was first. Coming out of high school, that was growing up in a small town, you just never heard of the term engineer. And but once I became aware and I realized what it was, I always had an interest in math and science, and I decided that's what I wanted to become. I really didn't appreciate that there's a bigger problem than just solving the technical, which is that systems integration. And I wish that I had spent more time thinking about that. And so, if I could advise a young engineer now planning for his or her future, is keep a systems mindset, not just a discipline mindset. Yes, we want to get good at our disciplines. We want to be great at what we do. But a bigger picture, understanding how all the pieces fit together, I think if you want to grow your career is well more important than being a great thermal analyst. You want to do that, have a strong base, but then know how to put everything together.
What do you think the 3 best hard skills and soft skills to have for an engineer?
Wow. Skills.
It's a loaded question.
Yeah, it is a loaded question. Maybe these aren't skills. It's maybe more character trait.
And I'll take that. Yeah, just something to give them a good mind of what should go.
Yeah. So as I said before, one of the things you want to have, and I've expressed this to other young people, is tenacity.
Yeah.
You're always in a problem solving mode, right? As an engineer, that's the first thing that they give you. A set of ground rules and assumptions or requirements, whatever you want to call them, and then they tell you, now go make this thing do something. And you look at it at first and you're like, I don't even know how to do it. So I think having tenacity, the willingness to continue to throw yourself at a problem and eventually you'll solve it, is one of the strongest capabilities, skills, character traits you need to have. Open-mindedness, being open to thinking about a solution differently or thinking about a problem differently to enable a solution, but also being open to getting some help, because you're not necessarily the smartest guy in the room, or you're not the first guy to ever think about it. And so being open-minded and willing to reach out to get some help, kind of tying it to tenacity, but relying on those skills that you've developed through your hard work, using that hard work. And now let's go back to the fundamentals and do things things the way we were taught to do. So those, and that's not talking about math and science. That's not talking about all those things, because you can pick up a book and work hard. And I think those skills, they'll enable you then to use what you've learned. Soft skills, I think the hardest one, and we've talked about it before, is just listening.
Yeah.
Taking a minute, stepping back and listening and trying to learn.
Did you ever struggle asking for help, or did it kind of grow on later in your life? Like, it's okay.
Yeah, I think that's kind of how we're built, right? We think we've got to figure it out. So we spend a lot of time working hard to try to figure it out. We don't want to show the weakness that I don't know how to do this. And the thing that's incredibly prevalent is that a lot of the work that you're trying to do has been attempted by someone. So study, read papers, read books, go ask for help, and definitely go ask some of the more senior folks, hey, how would you attack this? And most time, especially in the world that I've grown up in, people are willing to help. They all want you to succeed. And that's, I think, another part of the NASA culture that's pretty awesome, is most everybody is success-oriented, performance-oriented. They want all of us to succeed. We succeed together.
How do you balance your work life and your home life? Because you do seem like you're a very busy man.
It's, I think early on it was pretty, I would say pretty hard, because you're wanting to be successful. You're still building a career. But as you grow your family and you realize that there's somebody else who needs you as much as the program needs you, you start finding ways to carve out that time. And I think it's just important to establish those boundaries. You work hard every day. You go home, enjoy your family every night, and you just have to establish that. We are fortunate to work in an environment and have leaders that have established that as important to our our culture. So take it. We take advantage of that, and you put in your time to do what you've been tasked to do. But at some point, you just know you need to go home, refresh, come back, and do it again.
I've asked all my questions. Is there anything else you want to touch on?
That's all I can think of. I think, I really appreciate this opportunity.
Yes, I've enjoyed this. Thank you very much for being here.
Absolutely. Thank you.
What a wonderful podcast. Thank you so much, Mr. Reggie, for being in the Spark Studio. I thoroughly enjoyed it, and I think our viewers are going to get a lot out of it. So make sure y'all follow us at UAH I2C on all social media platforms. Bye, everyone. Onward and upward.